moving right along with the rest of the show and into the second segment, mandatory minicamp is still going on around the NFL. Last week, 10 teams started their mandatory minicamp, 3 days of practice, and they ended it, of course, in that week. Now, the other 22 teams started theirs and will conclude theirs at the end of this week. And then you get into the break before training camp, and then it starts to really pick up more. You get the pads on, you get into preseason. The season is getting a little bit closer and closer, a lot faster than many people think. And it is exciting with mandatory minicamp. I know it's still a short period, but you do get to see a little bit more intensity, I feel like, and that's something I really enjoy. Each team is required to have 3 days of practices, like I mentioned. And just a quick note before I start on the teams I wanted to talk about, the Detroit Lions were one of those teams that had their mandatory minicamp last week, as I talked about it, and they overdid it a little bit. You can't go too much towards the contact side of things. You are limited to how much contact you face during these mandatory minicamps, obviously, because you don't have the pads to really go all out. The NFL punished them for maybe going a little bit past those borders, and they had their mandatory minicamp last week, and they were going to have some voluntary workouts this week, but they were rescinded away from one of those practices, so they had one of theirs taken away, and now they had one less to do because of that. And it is funny because of the story and how it relates to the Lions, just because it's Dan Campbell. You know how intense he is if you've seen any games and have seen any of his press conferences. I just thought it was something surprising, but also not surprising when you have the full context of who Dan Campbell is and who the Detroit Lions are as well. But in saying that, I will get into now this segment and bringing up some of the teams I wanted to focus in on here truly, and some storylines that have to do with some of them heading into this mandatory minicamp period. The first one being the Pittsburgh Steelers. They started theirs actually today. Some teams started theirs yesterday, but the Steelers began today. Probably just concluded in about an hour or two ago, and the biggest storyline with them is obviously the quarterback battle. It finally starts to pick up a little bit more steam here, just because you are getting that extra bit of competitive edge out there, playing 11 on 11, 7 on 7s. The defense is out there. It's mandatory, so you have pretty much everybody there as well. You're not just running it against guys that typically wouldn't be in that rotation. And at the beginning of this entire thing, it always was said that this was Russell Wilson's job. You know, he was in the pole position, as I've heard endless amount of times, to have the quarterback one job. But now, as we keep heading more towards the middle of June, towards the end of June, and now hopefully into training camp as we inch closer and closer to that, it's starting to seem like more and more this is going to be a real close battle, and maybe not so much of an edge over for Russell Wilson as originally anticipated. Obviously, Russell Wilson is coming with some baggage, his time there from the Denver Broncos, and it isn't sunshine and roses either for Justin Fields. So at the beginning, to say that Russell Wilson had that much edge over him, I think it was a little bit questionable, but now I really do believe it, that this will be more of a competition than most people will want to realize, and Justin Fields will certainly get some reps with the ones over the course of mandatory minicamp, perhaps, or more so into training camp. But this is going to be a really interesting battle to watch. Justin Fields obviously has the youth factor on his side. Russell Wilson has the experience. Very similar. Russell Wilson, once he was younger, similar to Justin Fields, that running aspect. Now, a little bit slower, maybe not as mobile, but the arm is still there. Justin Fields has been a little bit questionable with his accuracy and the arm aspect of his profile. So it will be very notable and very interesting to watch these two and how this battle unfolds over the next week and then into training camp, and who really does the extra bit to gain the edge over the other one. But that's the first one. Then we can jump into the second one and start talking about the Los Angeles Chargers. Jim Harbaugh's new identity for this team, the offense really focusing in on them. Justin Herbert, all of his receivers left. All of his receivers walked out the door, and now you are still this franchise quarterback, very talented guy. The arm talent is there. You have the physical build and everything, but you don't really have the guys out there to throw it to with the utmost confidence that they're going to produce something special about it. You have to regain that trust again with a Quentin Johnson, a Ladd McConkey, who they just drafted in the NFL draft. So that process, how it all unfolds, will be certainly interesting to watch. And also just this new identity with Jim Harbaugh bringing over that tough punch you in the face sort of mentality that he had in Michigan. You saw it with how they're building their team now. Went offensive line with the 5th overall pick, and now you bring in Gus Edwards, you bring in J.K. Dobbins. You're trying to build this team from the inside out, really filling out those trenches, really making both offense and defensive lines your strengths, and then you could build off of that through play action and opening up the passing game that way. It is logical now because obviously you gave up all your weapons, all of your explosive players, but how this all unfolds and how Justin Herbert sort of adapts to it, because up until this point he has been this gunslinger, winning the games with his arms, throwing it about 30 times at least per game. Now he's going to have to do a little bit less, and how he manages that and still, find some success with the throws he has. It might dip a little bit in quantity, but the quality aspect of it should still be there. And I'm very interested to see how this new team looks. Very much going away from the recent trend of throwing it all over the field like the NFL likes to produce and advertise out there for their game. But regardless, interesting team there to follow. But moving on to the next team, we have the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, obviously selected 2nd overall, and just how he adapts to the NFL and how he regains and sort of learns Cliff Kingsbury's offense and how quickly he does it as well, because I'm penciling him in to be the starter. I know they have Marcus Mariota there, and to my knowledge, they haven't announced Jaden Daniels as the out-and-out starter like the Chicago Bears did with Caleb Williams. So technically, there is something there to still watch, but I expect Jaden Daniels to start, and how quickly he learns this offense will be huge because, again, they didn't address the wide receiver position, which I would have loved that they did. I love Terry McLaurin. I think he's a great number 1 option for them. Then you have Jahan Dotson, but I still feel that they needed one extra guy in there to provide some more trust for Jaden Daniels. He has all the physical abilities. Of course, he can escape and extend plays like that, but you don't really want him doing that too much to take those extra hits if you don't have to. The offensive line is still a little bit shaky, but he is the key. He is the catalyst for everything that this offense can be. So how quickly he masters it will be something to take note of as we go on through mandatory minicamp. Then we jump into another team trying to learn a new offense with a very experienced quarterback now in Josh Allen. A lot of new wide receivers in there. Matt Collins, Keon Coleman, really highlight some of the new ones. Curtis Samuel as well. A lot of guys haven't caught passes from Josh Allen, so that baby step sort of instruction there that they're going to have to get over will be the beginning process of this, but how their offense maybe changes a little bit. Maybe they use the tight ends even more. Maybe James Cook becomes an even more prominent figure, maybe in the passing game now, more than ever in his 3rd year. I'm expecting them to rely on the running game a lot more. James Cook looked solid last year, and also Josh Allen using his legs as well. He isn't shy about taking hits. He embraces them, and he even looks for them at certain times. He has the very intimidating build for such a massive quarterback. So how they adapt their offense, which receivers will step up during any point of the season, who does it early, who does it maybe towards the playoffs, I think will be just as significant in either situation. And who becomes Josh Allen's number 1 go-to guy. It could still be a tight end. Dalton Kincaid had a very good rookie season last year, so it could be him. But the receivers are definitely going to have to play a role at some point this season. I'm interested to see who that guy is and who Josh Allen puts the most trust in as we go on in the regular season. But that's the Buffalo Bills. Then we move on, stay in the same division with the New York Jets. Big stories coming out today. The Aaron Rodgers and Hassan Reddick absent from the start of mandatory minicamp. Hassan Reddick looking for a new contract, and how that whole situation works itself out. Some reports even mentioned that Robert Saleh and Hassan Reddick have had very minimal conversations with one another, and the team doesn't really know too much about what's going through Hassan Reddick's mind. Obviously, they know he wants a new contract, but much more hasn't been said from there. Not how you'd want to start a relationship for one of your premier pass rushers. And Aaron Rodgers, again, missed mandatory minicamp today for an unexcused reason. Robert Saleh said that it was something that wasn't important to him, so he had to miss it today. He will end up being fined for it, and that will be something to watch. I'm sure he'll be back soon. It's not like he's going to miss the entire minicamp. At least I hope he doesn't. But I'm sure the media is going to ask him about it. I doubt he gives a legit answer, but that's something to watch there. Him popping in and out, for some things that he finds value in, maybe over football. And then Hassan Reddick as well. Two crucial pieces to your puzzle. You don't want them missing too much time. Then also the chemistry aspect of it. That goes hand in hand with this. Hassan Reddick especially coming in, being a new player, you'd want to get him as many reps as possible, learning your schemes. And also just the offensive line chemistry working back there. How the defense works with all their pieces there is going to be massive. You don't want one piece missing out of the entire thing, throwing off the entire rhythm. So the quicker they get back, the more beneficial it will be for the New York Jets. But those are two things to sort of watch out here as we move on. The second to last team I'll get to is the Atlanta Falcons. Sort of similar, new scheme, and also Michael Penix's development. Has had some up and downs throughout the voluntary workouts, through OTAs, and the phase 1 and phase 2 portions of the off season. But he is sort of getting better. You are seeing those those growing pains there with Michael Penix and how he develops. I'm sure Kirk Cousins is still penciled in to be the starter, but how quickly Michael Penix develops and gets his accuracy a little bit more under control there for this offense will be something to watch. It's exciting to have Michael Penix and seeing him back there and just going along with all those young weapons. He still has a way to go, but watching his development will be huge. And also just how they play off of this new scheme now with a new offensive coordinator, new head coach. Last year, Arthur Smith depended a lot on the running game. The hype around this team now is that they will finally use Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and get the ball to these weapons as they would have so long been wanting to do for the longest of times. Of course, you don't want to go too far away from Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, who I think is a great back, but how they find that balance, where they find their true success and identity will be something to see sort of be implanted here at the early stages of the offseason with mandatory minicamp. And then the last team I will mention is the not the Chicago Bears, that should say the Denver Broncos, but I have the pictures up there. Zach Wilson and Bo Nix really starting to separate themselves in the quarterback competition. You see Jared Stidham there in the back as well. He's also technically competing for that spot, but I think up until this point it has been all about Zach Wilson and Bo Nix. Both of them getting praised by the media and Sean Payton as well. Zach Wilson obviously coming from that very bad situation with the New York Jets and never really developing into the number 2 overall prospect that he was. Now he gets a new opportunity, still at a very young age, at 24, 25 years old. It is funny just because Bo Nix, his first year in the NFL, he's also 25, 24 years old, and we have seen some more maturity from him, and that's something Sean Payton likes and has pointed out so far. So these two are really starting to, get into the same lane and try to battle each other for the starting quarterback position. How and who really gets that lead heading into training camp, I think, will be huge. And who starts off as the starter at training camp will also be something to watch. But those are just some of the teams I picked out. Some of the more interesting storylines I felt will be something to watch during this week of mandatory minicamp. But that'll do it for that segment. And when we return, we're going to get into some more running back rankings, this time in the NFC South, touching on some of the teams I pointed out just now in this segment and how they fall in my power rankings for the running backs in this division. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short break.